more Fantastic Mr. Fox. We have a couple chapters to read here. Where we left off, we met a new character, Badger, who said all the other animals that dig underground are also trapped under the hill. The foxes said that they were going to have a feast for everybody, and then they went to Bunce's, I believe. Yes, Bunce's, to get some ducks, and they got ham and bacon to send it to the feast, and they said they had one more stop. Any guesses? There's one more farmer, so I bet they head to Beans. That's my guess. Chapter 14 is called Badger Has Doubts. Do you know what doubts mean? If you doubt something. So Badger feels that he doesn't really trust the plan anymore. He's kind of worried the plan might not work. That's what doubt means. So chapter 14, Badger Has Doubts. Just one more visit, cried Mr. Fox. And I'll bet I know where that'll be, said the only small fox left now. He was the smallest fox of them all. Where? Asked Badger. Well, said the smallest fox, we've been to Bogus's and we've been to Bunce's, but we haven't been to Beans. It must be Bean. You are right, said Mr. Fox. And so's Miss McDonald. Ah, my prediction was right. But what you don't know is which part of Bean's place we are going to visit. Which? They both said together. Aha, said Mr. Fox, just you wait and see. They were digging as they talked. The tunnel was going forward fast. Suddenly, Badger said, Doesn't this worry you just a tiny bit, Foxy? Worry me? Said Mr. Fox. What? All this stealing? Mr. Fox stopped digging and stared at Badger as though he had gone completely dotty. That means completely crazy. My dear old furry frump, he said, do you know anyone in the whole world who wouldn't swipe a few chickens if his children were starving to death? There was a short silence while Badger thought deeply about this. You are far too respectable, said Mr. Fox. There's nothing wrong with being respectable, Badger said. Look, said Mr. Fox, Bogus, Bunce, and Bean are out to kill us. You realize that, I hope. I do, Foxy, I do indeed, said the gentle Badger. But we're not going to stoop to their level. We don't want to kill them. I should hope not indeed, said Badger. We wouldn't dream of it, said Mr. Fox. We shall simply take a little food here and there to keep our families alive, right? I suppose if we have to, said Badger. If they want to be horrible, let them, said Mr. Fox. We down here are decent, peace-loving people. Badger laid his head to one side and smiled at Mr. Fox. Foxy, he said, I love you. Thank you, said Mr. Fox, and now let's get on with the digging. 5 minutes later, Badger's front paws hit against something flat and hard. What on earth is this? He said. It looks like a solid stone wall. He and Mr. Fox scraped away the soil. It was a wall, but it was built of bricks, not stones. There was a wall right in front of them, blocking their way. Now, who in the world would build a wall underground? Said Badger. Very simple, said Mr. Fox. It's a wall of an underground room, if I'm not mistaken. It's exactly what I'm looking for. Chapter 15, Bean's Secret Cider Cellar. Mr. Fox examined the wall carefully. He saw that the cement between the bricks was old and crumbly. He loosened a brick without much trouble, pulled it away. Suddenly, out from the hole where the brick had been, there popped a small, sharp face with whiskers. Go away, it snapped. You can't come in here, it's private. Good Lord, said Badger, it's Rat. You saucy beast, said Mr. Fox. I should have guessed where I'd find you down here somewhere. Go away, shrieked Rat. Go on, beat it. This is my private place. Oh, be quiet, said Mr. Fox. I will not be quiet, shrieked Rat. This is my place. I got here first. The fox gave a brilliant smile, flashing its white teeth. My dear Rat, he said softly, I am a hungry fellow, and if you don't hop to it quickly, I shall eat you up in one gulp. That did it. Rat popped back fast and out of sight. Mr. Fox laughed and began pulling more bricks out of the wall. When he made a biggish hole, he crept through it. Badger and the smallest fox followed him. They found themselves in a vast, damp, gloomy cellar. This is it, cried Mr. Fox. This is what? Asked Badger. This place is empty. Where are the turkeys? Asked the smallest fox. Staring into the gloom, I thought Bean was a turkey man. He is a turkey man, said Mr. Fox, but we're not after turkeys now. We've got plenty of food. Then what do we need, Dad? Take a good look around, said Mr. Fox. Don't you see anything that interests you? Badger and the smallest fox peered into the half-darkness. As their eyes became accustomed to the gloom, they began to see what looked like... excuse me. They began to see what looked like a whole lot of big glass jars standing upon the shelves around the walls. They went closer. They were jars. There were hundreds of them, and upon each one was written the word apple cider. The small fox leapt high in the air. "Oh, Daddy," cried out, "look what we found out. It's apple cider." "Exactly," said Mr. Fox. "Tremendous," shouted Badger. "Bean's secret cider cellar," said Mr. Fox. "But go carefully, my dears. Don't make a noise. This cellar is right underneath the farmhouse itself." "Cider," said Badger, "is especially good for badgers. We take it as medicine. 1 large glass 3 times a day with meals and at bedtime." "We will make this feast into a banquet," said Mr. Fox. While they were talking, the smallest fox had sneaked out of the jar of the smallest fox had sneaked a jar off the shelf and taken a gulp. "Wow!" he gasped. "Wowee!" You must understand this was not the ordinary, weak, fizzy cider one buys in a store. It was the real stuff, homemade, that was so good, and it boiled right down to your stomach. "Ah!" gasped the smallest fox. "This is good." Mr. Fox grabbed it and took a tremendous gulp himself. "It's miraculous," he whispered. "It's fabulous. It's beautiful." "It's my turn," said Badger. He gurgled the cider, and it bubbled down his throat. "It's like melted gold," he gasped. "Oh, Foxy, it's like drinking sunbeams and rainbows." "Put that down at once," shrieked Rat. "There will be none left for me." Rat was perched on the highest shelf in the cellar, peering down from behind a huge glass jar. There was a small rubber tube inserted to the neck of the jar, and Rat was using it as a straw to suck out the apple cider. "Mind your own business," shrieked Rat. "And if you great clumsy brutes come messing about here, we'll all be caught. Let me sip my cider in peace." At that moment, they heard a woman's voice calling from above them. "Hurry up and get that apple cider, Mabel," the voice called. "You know Mr. Bean doesn't like to be kept waiting, especially when he's been out all night in a tent." The animals froze, and they stayed absolutely still. Their ears pricked and their bodies tensed. Then they heard the sound of a door being opened. The door was at the top of the flight of stone steps leading down from the house to the cellar. And now someone was starting to come down the steps. Chapter 16 is called The Woman. "Quick," said Mr. Fox, "hide!" He and Badger and the smallest fox jumped onto the shelf and crouched behind a row of big jars. Peering out around the jars, they saw a huge woman coming down into the cellar. At the foot of the steps, the woman paused, looking right and left. Then she turned and headed straight for the place where Mr. Fox and Badger and the smallest fox were hiding. She stopped right in front of them. The only thing between her and them was a row of jars. She was so close, Mr. Fox could hear the sound of her breathing. Peeping around a crack between the 2 bottles, he noticed that she was carrying a big rolling pin in one hand. "Oh no!" "How many will he want this time, Mrs. Bean?" the woman shouted, and from the top of the steps she heard the other voice call back, "Bring up 2 or 3 jars." "He won't want that many today because he's not going to be up there for more than a few hours longer. He says the fox is bound to make a run for it this morning. It can't possibly stay down in that hole another day without food." The woman in the cellar reached down and lifted a jar from the shelf. The jar she took was next but one to the jar behind what Mr. Fox was crouching. "I'll be glad when that rotten brute is killed and strung up on the front porch," she called out. "And by the way, Mrs. Bean, your husband promised I could have that tail as a souvenir." "The tail's been shot into pieces," said the voice from upstairs. "Didn't you know that?" "You mean it's ruined?" "Of course it's ruined. They shot the tail but missed the fox." "Oh, I so did want that tail," said the woman. "You can have the head instead, Mabel. You can get it stuffed and hang it on your bedroom wall. Hurry up now and get those jars." "Yes, ma'am, I'm coming," said the woman. She took a second jar from the shelf. "If she takes one more, she'll see us," thought Mr. Fox. Do you think she's going to see them? "My goodness, Mabel, I don't care so long as you get a move on." "Then 2 it is," said the woman, speaking to herself now. Carrying a jar in each hand, with the rolling pin tucked under her arm, she walked away across the cellar. At the foot of the steps, she paused and looked around, sniffing the air. "That rat's down here again, Mrs. Bean. I can smell him." "Then poison him, woman, poison him. You know where that poison is kept." "Yes, ma'am," Mabel said. She climbed slowly out of sight and up the steps. The door slammed. "Quick, grab a jar each and run for it," cried Mr. Fox. Rat stood on his high shelf and shrieked. "What did I tell you? You nearly got nabbed, didn't you? You nearly gave the game away. out of here from now on. I don't want you around. This is my place." "You," said Mr. Fox, "are going to be poisoned." "No way," said Rat. "I sit up here and I watch her putting that stuff down. She'll never get me." Mr. Fox and Badger and the smallest fox ran across the cellar, clutching a gallon each. "Goodbye, Rat," they called out. "Thanks for the lovely apple cider." "Thieves!" shrieked Rat. "Robbers! Bandits! Burglars!" And that is the end of that chapter, and I won't be reading the rest right now. And you don't have to do any writing or anything like that. I just wanted you to read and listen. Next time you hear it, I will finish the story for you. I'm so excited to hear how it ends.